today's meeting. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I believe Councilmember Harrison. Okay, next is the consent agenda.
So if you will give me just one moment, last Friday, some folks in this room did a thing, and in acknowledgement and special appreciation for the Special Olympics and what people who are differently abled in our community means to all of us. There were a few adventurous women who decided to participate in an activity, one of which was not me. That offer was extended, but I had a competing event that at the same time, really honestly, I went to welcome the new superintendent and see him be sworn in last Friday at 1 o'clock. But the mayor and the police chief decided that they were going to do it. So staff yesterday put together a really quick video to memorialize that event. So in an attempt to not embarrass them too much, the chief didn't even show up today, right? So we'll have to figure out another opportunity to get her. But thank you all. And I understand the invitation is going to be extended to the rest of you all at the table at a later time. Much later, so I will keep you all on the rotation and on the list so that if it comes up again, we can give them some additional names.
Yeah, Jane
we figured Jane would want to do it.
Well, I will say I was just reliving Friday, and I want to thank the chief for being my spirit sister and helping, just get over it. The hardest part is leaning back 30 stories high and trusting those who are helping you and trusting the equipment. But rappelling down is not quite easy either. But to see everybody's smiling faces and the athletes down there cheering you on made it all worthwhile. So thank you. All right, now on to consent agenda. That's a little different. We have one item pulled, I-3. And so could I have a motion to approve the rest?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Councilmember Jones?
Thank you so much. And mine is not as exciting as rappelling from a building on Friday, but this is for the no parking zones, the line of sight on Glen Eden Drive. That was a resident of mine, a constituent of mine that had called to discuss, and I just wanted to bring it to light. And you did an amazing job of explaining it in the backup, but I really want to give the opportunity for the public to understand what goes into decisions like that and any other alternatives that were considered, and this was the final decision.
So thank you for that question, Councilmember Jones. We have Jed Neffenegger and Matthew Courier from Transportation here to answer that question for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So again, Matthew Courier, I'm the parking manager for the city, and I have traffic engineer Jed Neffenegger with me as well. So from time to time, and we actually have another line of sight item as I-4, and we typically get about 1 or 2 of these a week. From time to time, the citizens reach out. This one came through a C-click fix, but folks reach out and say that intersections are unsafe. Sometimes it's caused by any type of debris that could potentially be in the way, and sometimes it's parked cars that block those views. So when staff receives that, we take those concerns seriously. And my department works closely with JEDS in traffic engineering to send out staff to do sightline evaluations. And what they're looking at is, depending on the speed of the road, clear sight lines out of those intersections to make sure that when folks pull up to those stop signs, when they look left, they look right, they can see oncoming traffic. This one at Tyson and Glen Eden was especially unique because it was not just parking, but it's also bike lanes. So again, if we don't have clear line of sight to folks traveling along, it's pretty easy to have accidents. And unfortunately, at Tyson and Glen Eden, we did have one crash in the last 12 months, specifically attributed to not being able to see parked cars. So we do those evaluations, and then we bring those forward to council on a pretty regular basis for acceptance. We do our best to limit the amount of parking that we have to take, but there's a certain amount based on the standards that JID team uses to make sure we clear out those sight lines to a specific distance.
Awesome. And I wanted to thank you in the backup material helping explain once that staff is alerted to a safety concern, whether or not, I know that there was construction in the area, and that was like, well, maybe if we wait until it's after the construction is done, then it'll go back to normal. But can you speak to what you observed, that even when the construction goes away, that it would still be an issue?
Yeah, the reality is if any sight line is obstructed, you can't see those oncoming cars within enough distance to make the right choice on whether to leave that intersection or not. So it may be bad, there may be specific incidents like construction that bring it to staff's attention to address it, but once we know about it, any cars parked in the future via, be it big vehicles or small vehicles, are still going to be in those sight lines if we don't protect those intersections with some no parking.
Awesome. So I thank you so much for shedding some light on that. I really want to use these opportunities when we can pull stuff to help educate so that residents understand that this is not a punishment. This is not us trying to take things away, but we're really trying to make it better for the rest of that block or the city. So I really appreciate that. And with that, I'd like to move for approval.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Okay. Next, we have the report and recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Good afternoon, Bynum Walter, Raleigh Planning and Development. We have a couple of items coming out of committee, or rather out of commission today. A reminder about some of our upcoming holidays. We're listing ones that coincide with regularly scheduled meetings. This is the list through the end of the year. We have some items that are already scheduled for public hearing. We have 2 scheduled for your next meeting, 1 scheduled for the first meeting in November, and then an item coming back at that first meeting in December. Coming out of Planning Commission, we have 4 items, and I'll walk through each of these. The first is a rezoning on the 6400 block of Pool Road. This is near the Neuse River Canoe Launch. The request is going from R6 to neighborhood mixed use. The Planning Commission recommends approval, and for this item and all others, we're recommending the November 7 public hearing date. The next request is 501 Hillsborough Street. This is just over an acre in the 500 block of Hillsborough Street between Hillsborough and Morgan. Planning Commission recommends approval with a split vote, and the suggested public hearing is November 7. The dissenting vote did not specifically comment as to why they voted against, but based on previous questions during the meeting, my understanding is they were not satisfied with the affordable housing contribution that was being offered by the applicant. This next request is Z3523. This is 0 Gorman Street. It's about 18 acres. It's currently zone conservation management. They're requesting to rezone to RX3 with a green frontage, some conditions. The Planning Commission did not make a recommendation here. They were very interested in what the applicant is proposing. This is an affordable housing development that they are working on. They had a lot of discussion with the applicant about additional conditions that would address environmental sensitivities on the site, and really wanted to see those changes to the case, but did not want to delay the applicant in the process because of the timing of the LIHTC application process. So wanted to forward this to you. They came very close to actually making a motion to recommend approval and stopped short of that, but really wanted for the process to move along for this. Again, recommending November 7 public hearing date. And then the final item is a comprehensive plan amendment to change the street plan, to change the street designation for a portion of Hillsborough Street just west of the fairgrounds. You may remember we had a rezoning case at this same location. My time is never right. It was recently, in recent memory. Yeah. So they're asking for a change to the street plan. Their motivation here is to allow on-street parallel parking along the frontage of their development just west of the fairgrounds. Planning Commission recommends approval, and again, we're suggesting a November 7 public hearing date. What questions could I answer for you before you discuss?
Yeah, just on the 0 Gorman Street, I'd like to request that we hold this and not set a date until October 17th, because that will allow them to put in zoning conditions before we see it. But I do like the idea of it coming back to us on November 7th, but we could decide that on October 17th.
Great.
Let me understand the strategy on that.
So they cannot put forth conditions, any new conditions, if we set the date today for the public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, and this was a request from the developer team.
Okay. We have a motion.
That would be my motion to hold 0 Gorman Street until October 17th.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that was unanimous. Do we have a motion on the remainder?
Move for approval of November 7th for remainder cases.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is special items. First is appropriation from council contingency for the Great Raleigh cleanup.
All right, good afternoon. Sadia Sattar here from Budget and Management Services, here to speak to you all about a council contingency item. So Councilmember Jones, you had asked us to bring back this item after the conversation that we had during the September 19th meeting, in particular for the Great Raleigh cleanup. Just as a reminder, we have set aside about $150,000 in council contingency each fiscal year. We've already approved $25,000 for Oak City Cares, and were we to approve this item today, City Council will have $113,000 left for the remainder of the fiscal year. So this council contingency item, as I mentioned, is for the Great Raleigh Cleanup, an organization that we're all too familiar with. I myself and Councilmember Patton, I ran into you at the Crabtree Creek Trail as well. So all super familiar with it as well. But this is essentially to start a pilot program that'll allow Preston Ross and his volunteers to offer a day's wages for a day's work, piloting a program that other cities around the country have also done. Our recommendation, or your recommendation, is that this would offer the unhoused residents of the city about $18 an hour should we move forward with this program. This will also allow Preston Ross to collect some data so that should this program be expanded in the future, they will have some data to allow for other grant applications to move forward with various other sources of funding. So the next step is that should you approve this moving forward, I'll work with my staff to make sure that we disperse this funding. So that's it from me.
Councilmember Jones, would you like to make the motion?
I would, and I first want to say thank you. I really, and you explained it so well, because I was really impacted by Preston's want to do something to help our in-house community and really looked at us as partners. So I'm really excited to motion this forward. So I motion for $12,000 to go to the Great Raleigh Cleanup for a pilot program.
Second. Megan can have it.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have petition annexation AX 1723.
Good afternoon, Bynum Walter, Raleigh Planning and Development again. This is a petition you heard first at your meeting on September 19. You deferred action to allow the applicant to consider delayed annexation date. You have the option to annex effective either the date of today's meeting or June 30 of 2024. And I believe the applicant is here, and as I understand it, would support either date.
Mayor
Yeah.
Pro Tem?
Yeah, is the hearing closed?
Yes.
Okay, with it being closed, and I received the email from the applicant, I move for a June 30th of 2024 as the effective date of annexation.
I just, in the backup, it says that one option is also June 30th, 2025.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am. Subsequent to publication of the agenda and further review with the city attorney's office, we've determined you have two options.
Oh, okay.
So that was
Do you
the
have a
motion.
second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have the
Well, the city attorney is saying to me that if you would like, you could also approve extension of utilities in the interim.
Oh, yes, I move for approval of the extension of utilities in the interim.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Next, we have report and recommendation of the city manager.
So as we are moving right along, we will keep the pace going. I have 3 items in my report this afternoon, the first of which is a grant award from FTA. We have Het Patel from Raleigh Transportation here to present this item for our new Bern Avenue BRT.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Again, Het Patel, City of Raleigh Transportation Department Transit Division. I'm here to present on the New Bern Avenue FTA Grant Award. We always like to start our presentations with an overall program overview, and then I'll discuss some next steps specific to New Bern and keep it brief with the council action in front of you today. In terms of the overview for the program, we have 4 main corridors coming out of downtown Raleigh. They're in different stages of implementation. New Bern Avenue is your furthest along, which is right now at the pre-construction phase and why we're here today. Southern Corridor just began the final design phase, so we're transitioning from preliminary design to final design on the Southern Corridor. The Western Corridor is still in preliminary design, and we anticipate submitting for federal ratings application in August of 2024 for the Western Corridor. And then the Northern Corridor is in a planning study that's still trying to identify a route connecting out to Midtown Raleigh and to Triangle Town Center. I've also added some other extensions that are planned in the capital area MPO there visually to connect out to Clayton and to connect out to RTP. That is a planning study that the capital area MPO is currently investigating, and then a future project sponsor would be identified. New Bern Avenue itself is 5.39 miles coming out of downtown Raleigh, connecting to New Hope Road via New Bern Avenue. 3.3 miles of that is in dedicated bus lanes, again, predominantly in downtown and along New Bern Avenue out to Sunnybrook and Wake Med. There will be 10 stations planned, 19 new platforms that will be constructed as part of the project, 7 60-foot articulated buses that will be providing that service to have bus rapid transit running every 10 minutes during the peak morning and afternoon hours. And then again, our next steps for this project is construction. I know I've presented this earlier, and everyone's really excited about getting to this phase. Today is a step in that direction. And so I know we have some new council members, so I just wanted to kind of highlight the overall process that it takes from the Federal Transit Administration side. The project was applied for in the Federal Transit Administration's capital investment grant process in 2019. It was accepted at that point, and then it has to go through some various steps. We got our medium-high rating, which made it eligible for federal funding in February of 2020. Then we got the subsequent allocations through the annual report from the Federal Transit Administration. What that really means is there's funding set aside for that specific project in federal budgets. We still have to show that we're ready to move into the construction phase before we can get that funding from the Federal Transit Administration. So we had that happen in the August of 2022. And again, we are moving into these next steps of construction contracts. And so in order to do that, we're trying to align our local match from the Wake Transit Plan funding with the federal grant that has been awarded in our city's ledger system, so we can continue to do those activities on the construction side. So again, the next steps are working with engineering services to go ahead and award our construction management, construction engineering, and inspection vendor contract in this November-December timeframe of this year, as well as going ahead and advertising our construction bid for the New Bern corridor this month with NCDOT approval, and then hopefully get the actual construction contract award to you guys in early December before your break. So the council action again today is to authorize staff to execute all required grant documentations and any associated budget amendments and transfers. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, all in favor?
Thank you.
Aye. Okay. Very gratifying, having worked on that for 10 years, so here we go.
And the next item, we have Ken Bowers from Planning and Development to give us an update on the Moore Square South property redevelopment opportunities.
Great. Thank you very much. Ken Bowers, Planning and Development. I'm going to give a refresher on the proposal that was selected from the RFP that we did last year, where the council selected a team led by Loden Properties and Loden Hospitality to take possession and redevelop some property the city owns on the east and southern side of Moore Square Park. Give you an update on the progress of what's been going on since then. I'm going to talk through a proposed three-phase disposition where the property will go out in 3 chunks, with 2 of those chunks to happen early and the other one to follow on a little bit later. And then lastly, we're going to propose that we include some additional parcels and basically the city's remaining land holdings on the city market block in this disposition, because we believe it would improve the outcomes for the overall project and for city market. So these were the properties that were advertised in the RFP. They are the parking lot and the old historic Esso station in the Moore Square Historic District on the south side. Did not include the Norwood House, which is a city-owned property and historic house that was moved there some years ago and faces the park and is currently occupied by park staff for Moore Square Park. And then on the east side, the sort of oddly shaped assemblage includes all the frontage on Bloodworth Street and a partial frontage on Person Street facing the park, but it includes some properties that the city never took ownership of on the south side and north side of that block. And it totaled about 2.6 acres on the north side and less than an acre on the south side. So Loden Properties put together a team for the eastern block that included, among other players, Greystar, a big multifamily developer and manager, and Greystone, an affordable housing developer. They proposed somewhere between 560 and 590 units, of which 400 would be market rate and 160 to 190 would be affordable. There would be our hotel on the property, a medium-sized grocery store, and some additional retail and dining with the plaza. They also proposed partnering with the Raleigh Rescue Mission to build them a new building and keep them on the block where they currently are. The affordable housing approach was among the best in the proposals received in both terms of the number of units and the AMI mix in the units. They are proposing to use an income mixing approach that would allow some of the units to go as low as 30% AMI. It's an ambitious project because it's fairly urban density, much denser than a typical tax credit project, and it would use a combination of 4% tax credits with gap financing from the city and the county. The Loden Hospitality, which is related entity partnered with North Pond, who does retail, and Summit Hospitality, who do hotels, to propose a boutique hotel next to City Market. Their proposal did include both a reuse concept for Esso Station, but they also desired to take over the entirety of the frontage, which would mean moving the Norwood House off of its current site to some other location, and I'll get to that. Their proposal was somewhat unique because they also included creative space, co-working space, as part of their proposal that would be tied into the hotel, and they particularly have a partnership with Raleigh Founded for the co-working space, which they saw as synergistic with the hotel in today's increasingly mobile work environment. So what has happened since last year? When we selected this proposal, one of the things we said, it was very ambitious. There were some unknowns. They were proposing to go beyond the property that the city had advertised in the RFP and try to assemble some of the private property on the block to enlarge the development opportunity. They were going to need time to do that, so we gave them time to do that. And they have tied up discussions with the Raleigh Rescue Mission on their plans for the property. They have concluded, I believe, negotiations to purchase additional parcels with everyone who is amenable to selling on the block. And as a result of the site changing its size, they have been doing some changes to the site master planning. So the site plan as it currently sits is somewhat different from what was proposed in the proposal, but the use mix is still consistent with the award that was given. On Moore Square South, we've done some feasibility about investigating the feasibility investigation of moving the Norwood House. It's physically possible to move it. We believe we have a city-owned site within the historic district that would serve the needs of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources. Their staff could still occupy the building. It would still face Moore Square Park, and it would still be in the historic district, so it would meet its historic mandate. And then we've also had discussions with a couple other small parcels that are located on Blake Street and City Market, including them in this disposition. So the three phases, what we're proposing to do is that the first phase, which has two components, would be the affordable housing parcel, and we're not quite ready to present that to you, but it should be coming this fall. We will be recombining the property to create a discrete lot for this project, and it'll be a ground lease to Greystone, the affordable developer. Those documents are being worked on right now, and the site plan is firming up the boundaries that will be used for the recombination. And that's going to be driven by the Housing Finance Agency's deadlines, as well as our own internal deadlines for our gap financing program. We're also proposing to put the City Market hotel site out in an early phase as well, because the project is pretty well defined and there's no complications for it. It's a fee simple sale. Phase 2, which is the balance of Moore Square East, they've requested a little bit more time on the property assemblage side and the site planning side. So that would follow some months after these other dispositions would be. That is also proposed to be a fee simple sale of the land. So this shows illustratively what the project progress on site assembly is. It's shown in the orange is the additions to Moore Square East includes the Raleigh Rescue Mission property. Even though they're staying on site, they will occupy a slightly different footprint on the block. And then the old Kello Pest Control site on the southwest corner. There's only one property that has indicated repeatedly that they are not interested in selling, and that is that notch that's out of the property on the Martin Street frontage. We show the Norwood House parcel, and then the Blake Street parcels are on the southern end of the City Market property. And then on the east side, this kind of shows what the current conceptual site plan is. So now there's control over the entire frontage on the park, which I think is beneficial in terms of activation for the park. There'll be a parking and retail podium, and then the hotel and the residential towers will rise above that. The Raleigh Rescue Mission would move to the corner of Hargett and Bloodworth in a new building, and the affordable housing component is now located on the southeast corner of Bloodworth and Martin Street, with I think a slightly larger footprint than was originally shown, but still the same 160 unit count. The Norwood House relocation, adding the lot it sits on, which is addressed at 226 East Martin, as about 4,400 square feet, and some additional frontage to the site. This shows where we were proposing to move it to, which is adjacent to one of the access ways for the Moore Square Transit Center. That is a city-owned site. It would require some site work and reconfiguration, but the house does fit entirely within the city-owned property. And again, it is in the historic district, so And in some ways, it provides better access to the park for staff because it's located at an existing mid-block crosswalk, which is heavily used. The Blake Street parcels add about 0.13 acres or 5,700 square feet to the overall assemblage, and they would also provide the project with some more direct frontage and activation within City Market itself. There is one building on one of the parcels. It's about 2,300 square feet. It's a fairly raw building, kind of a warehouse garage, no functioning HVAC in it, no bathrooms in it today that could be used by members of the public. So use of this building requires substantial upfit. And then the southernmost parcel is a parking lot. It's got curb stops, but not much striping, but it looks to me like you could at max get about 4 cars on that parking lot today. So these properties in their current state are adding very little to the city market. There was at one point an open air vegetable market in 333 Blake, but that has been closed for a number of years now. Their proposal is to partner with ArtSpace to expand the cultural use on this block and bring ArtSpace a sort of street level, transparent storefront type of environment into City Market that they have been lacking. They have, of course, a wonderful facility that's open to the public, and it's a great place to go on First Fridays where you can see the studios where the artists do their work and their work is on display. But at the street level, it's hard to see in there. It's not the building's not very transparent. This would provide a lot of transparency and would allow them to expand their gallery space and their studio space as part of the overall project. So why include these extra parcels in the sale? Basic reason is we think that the Loden team is uniquely positioned to do something very meaningful in terms of creating increased cultural presence and activity in the heart of City Market, which is a unique historic asset in downtown Raleigh. Currently, these parcels are generating essentially no activity except for the occasional parking of a small number of automobiles. They provide direct frontage in the City Market, which I think will allow this project to do more activation on, Blake Street is kind of the main through street in City Market. The street level presence for ArtSpace will really help showcase the work of their resident artists and the additional space. They are going to be able to relocate some of the waste handling into the interior of the property. That's going to give them a little more room for that, which I think will improve the layout of the hotel project and allow, again, the studio space to be incorporated along Person Street frontage. So all this has been by way of an update, but we do have one request, which is that neither the Norwood House parcel nor these 2 parcels on Blake Street were part of the RFP. Technically, they have not been authorized for private sale, so we are asking if the council so desires and agrees with the reasons that I've set forth here, that this would be a good idea, is to include some or all of those parcels into the disposition. I want to be clear, these are going, even though there's a cultural component to it, this is not, these are being sold at their appraised value as per state law. And so there'll be an appraisal of all these properties before a price is settled on for the disposition. And these will be incorporated in the development agreement that's going to be part of the overall project to ensure that development occurs in accordance with what was in the RFP and their proposal that allowed them to get selected. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So one question that several council members asked me, and I think it would be good to have clarification. The money from this, how is it used? I know in past instances, like when we did 301 Hillsborough, we put that funding that we got back into our affordable housing fund. Has there been some discussion on how this money would be used?
So our working assumption, and I believe this is something that was presented to council at the outset of the process, obviously there's a specific action to make this happen, is that it would go into the housing fund. Yes. And part of this is that because of the size of the tax credit affordable project that's occurring on the east side, we expect, and the fact that it's a more expensive construction type than is typical for a tax credit project, I mean, this is multiples more dense than the typical tax credit project is. That there'll be a large gap financing ask, probably such that the money will be flowing out of the hotel site and into a large share of it will be flowing into the affordable housing site. So it's a key part of the overall financing package of this project. And how we're able to achieve affordability in a downtown site for a project like this.
Okay. Councilmember Harrison, and then Fort.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I just want to clarify, the additions to Moore Square East, they were in orange back in the map.
Yeah.
My understanding is that was a private purchase that has nothing to do with, existing city property.
That's absolutely right.
Okay, just checking on that. So all we're really looking at in that particular map are the blue pieces, which are on the south side of Moore Square. So that's the Norwood House parcel and the Blake Street parcels.
That's
Those are
correct.
the three, okay. I'm just
Yeah.
confirming I understand everything going on here, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And then, so I didn't see a map of the exact uses. Like if you go to the next slide, I see the progress on site planning for the east, parcel. Do we have something like that for the south? Did I miss that?
Hold on a second. The closest thing we have that's somewhat up to date is this revised proposal here. And this just shows the ground level. So it obviously shows the parking level, the hotel, and not the upper floor uses. But let me get the little thing up here.
So we've got hotel in the back.
So, the hotel is kind of like over all of this. There's the creative and co-working stuff is up there. They have added art studio space along the Person Street frontage, which I believe was not part of the original proposal, and that's because of the partnership with Art Space. That art space stuff here goes here, and then the kind of moving of mechanical equipment off the site and waste handling over to this side is also part of that. So the frontage along the streets would all be cultural, and in the interior of those parcels would be some of the, back of house functions for the hotel.
And just so I understand, is it going to be the same hotel company as what's being also built on the east side? Are those different?
We have not gotten into detail as to the flag. Yeah.
I'm Russ Jones, so I'm with Loden Hospitality. Thanks for that cue. The Moore Square South site, to answer your question, Jane, hasn't really changed much because it's really, really straightforward. Moore Square East, much more complicated as far as just amassing other parcels. As to brand of hotel and ownership of hotel, Moore Square South will be one independent boutique hotel that is not going to have a brand behind it, unlikely to have a brand behind it. What's on the east side will be in a vertical condo structure, will likely be a lifestyle brand.
And so I guess my final question is related to the art space addition here on the city-owned property. I think art space is amazing. I love their work. I'm just curious, had we given any other groups an opportunity to consider being part of the space? And I think in particular, I'm thinking about supportive services for folks that are perhaps in need, just because we have continual needs in that arena. And I appreciate the mayor's first comment about how the monies will be used and going towards affordable housing, but I just want to make sure we're also having this conversation about spaces for supportive services for those populations.
So if we were to go that route, I believe that the correct direction would for the city to hold on to the land and then put out a competitive process. I think we'd have to be clear as to what we want to see. Obviously, that's a very different use. We would also, at that point, it being pure public benefit, probably be not realizing any return from the land and the buildings that are on the property today. Instead, we would be making those available for that type of use. So that is not, we have not received direction that there is an interest in locating those types of uses in City Market. If there is, then I think the direction for council would be to hold on to those properties. My understanding from talking to Loden, obviously they were put a proposal that did not include those two parcels. They were prepared to move forward without them. I think we're all in agreement that this project was better, but if there's competing uses for the property such that the council does not feel comfortable putting them into the sale, then of course we still get, I think, the bulk of what they're proposing minus the cultural space additions.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just want to kind of put those different options out on the table so that we're thinking through possibilities.
I think the city manager had some additional items you want to mention?
As we continue to partner with Wake County on opportunities, particularly in our downtown business core, there are some things that we are currently considering that in the shelter space or wraparound support services that they obviously take the lead on, but we are continuing conversations with them to be able to achieve some of exactly what you're asking for.
Actually, they're conducting a study right now. They hired a consultant, I think it was about 6 months ago, to do this study and determine what the needs are. And then they're going to make recommendations on next steps. They will take the lead and we will partner with them. That was something that came forward to say vibrant, healthy community before the election. Councilmember Fort.
First, I want to acknowledge the Executive Director of Art Space, Carly Jones, who's here. I don't know if she's got anything to add to this presentation, but I guess my question is, we had the RFP process and a number of entities submitted proposals based on the RFP as it was presented. And this probably is a question for the city attorney. If we're talking about adding in additional properties now, how does that legally impact the process? Because those properties were not a part of the RFP that was originally presented for folks to respond to.
Yes, Councilmember Ford. Brandon Poole, the City Attorney's Office. So the city has authority under its charter to do direct disposition, and so the RFP process was not a legally mandated process. It was just a selection process administered by the city. The city could choose to directly sell this entirely outside of the RFP process. I think what Mr. Bowers was asking for is the ability to include this in the negotiations so council knew it was happening as the other projects being discussed.
Okay, Councilmember Melton.
Mine's not a question. I just had some thoughts and comments. This initial RFP was actually selected at a meeting I was not able to attend. So this is sort of the first time I've had to weigh in on this. And I just want to say, seeing it sort of progress through the planning stages, I think this is a wonderful use of the sites that are very underutilized around Moore Square, where the city has made a significant investment. And I can't think of a project that has more check boxes for win-win-wins. And we know we need hotel rooms. They're proposing 2 hotels. We know we need affordable housing. They're proposing substantial affordable housing. They're going to partner with the Raleigh Rescue Mission and rebuild their facility, which I think will help with a lot with supportive services. And then we have a fantastic women and Black operated art studio that has made a significant investment in this area by owning their own building, that they will be able to daylight a lot of their good work by partnering with this development project. These parcels that are being proposed to be used for art space are very small, would need significant amount of work, I think, to make them habitable for people. And right now they're empty. I mean, you walk by there and it is empty. It quite frankly sad. And if we can activate this space and daylight the good work that art space does, particularly focused on, women and children and disenfranchised communities, I think that would be a great sort of just bow on this entire project. So I am definitely in support of moving this forward, and I just wanted to weigh in on that.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I definitely just want to say thank you for the proposal and the ideas of bringing this forward. As a former board member of Art Space, I definitely know the great work that our executive director, CEO is doing, and we appreciate you, Ms. Jones, for the work in looking at this partnership and looking at these ideas of highlighting the beautiful work of Raleigh. I think, when we talk about Raleigh, and I'm going to put a plug, this is in District C, the fact that we can talk about our growth and our history and our arts and still have a project that works on affordability as far as the affordable housing component, and that being in the first part of this project is key, as well as your work with the Raleigh Rescue Mission and working with them to keep them basically on site. There's a shift, but they're still basically on site, continue the great work that they do, especially when we have our white flag nights and other things of that nature. So I definitely support this work and this project and look forward to the city continuing. I know there's parts still to be done when we look at the LIHTC and moving that forward. And I definitely want to commend all the work that's taken place so far.
Councilmember Black?
A couple of questions. So with the affordable housing component, what AMI is that supposed to be at? I must have missed it. I don't know if I saw it or.
Yeah, so
Okay.
15% at 30, 20% at 50, 45% at 60, and 20% at 80. So the income mixing target is includes the 80% because that provides the ability to include the 30%.
Thanks. I just
And
wanted
still
to
meet-
see
yeah.
that. I think I missed that when you went through. Additionally, I think the land that we're talking about is a parking lot. I also am in favor. I come from the arts and activism community, so I'm in favor of the art space stuff. I do think Councilmember Jones Harrison, I was like, I did not say the right person, brought up an interesting point. I would ask the city manager if we can get some more briefing on some of the things that are happening. Mayor Bodwin brought up that the process started well before we were in office, and it's almost been a year since then. So I just want to see, like, if we are doing these partnerships and we are having these conversations, when are we going to be briefed on them so that we can have an understanding of things as we're looking at assemblages downtown that are deeply affected by our people experiencing homelessness. And then the last question I have, and this is not about the parcels of land, I just want like the clarity for myself. I'm looking at the orange piece that's on the corner of Hargett where the rescue mission is going to be moved. Is that going to affect the House of Art that's there?
So going to affect the what?
House of Art.
Yeah, yes, I believe it would.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Black, just to respond to something you said, on my list of things from the mayor and council members' reports, I was going to ask if the county would attend our Safe, Vibrant, and Healthy Neighborhood meeting in October to talk about the progress they are making and any of the partnerships that we have, so we get an update.
That's awesome. We'll definitely look forward to seeing that meeting later this month, or not, maybe next month, but eventually.
Yeah, whenever they can make it.
Yeah.
Councilmember Patton, and then Jones.
Awesome. Hi. Thanks for the presentation. I also want to put an exclamation mark on the deeply strategic work that's been done here to use the funds from the sale to leverage the subsidy that's going to be needed so we can put affordable housing where it's most desperately needed. So I really want to put a star on that. A couple questions that I had are if you can provide any historical insight on why these city-owned parcels haven't been activated in the past.
No. Other than it hasn't been something the city made a priority. There was as I said, for many, many years, there was basically a little farmer's market in that building, and they would throw open the garage doors, and there were vegetables in there. I used to go there and buy vegetables. Pretty good, actually. I think they were Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It kind of got supplanted by other farmers markets being run by the DRA out on the square and elsewhere. I'm not entirely know the reason as to why that ceased. I believe it ceased before the pandemic hit. So they haven't been there for about 4 years, and I think the only reason why we haven't done anything is that the building would require a lot of investment, and of course the other side is vacant, so there's really nothing to do with it other than right now park cars on it. So I think where this kind of landed was their proposed, the Norwood House was their idea, not ours. Our assumption was the Norwood House would stay where it was. When they posited this to us and we tested it with Parks and said, would you be comfortable if we can move it over here? And they said yes. We thought, well, we'll investigate it, but until we know that can happen, it's not really part of the disposition. Now that we are quite confident that can be done, we're bringing it forward. The other two parcels, I think it was kind of a process of us sitting here and saying, well, this is an amazing project, and when it's done, we'll have our little empty building and 4-space parking lot. Is that really the best outcome? And then how is that usable? Much more usable or much better utilized if it was part of the larger assemblage. And so probably we should have thought about including it in the original RFP for reasons lost in the midst of time. I cannot tell you exactly why that was not done, but we're looking to rectify that now. So that's where that sits.
We'll blame it on COVID.
And then one follow-up question. Was there consideration and is there any value in doing long-term ground lease on these parcels instead of sale?
We have, obviously that is an option, and but we're not aware of any particular advantage to the city to doing that. I mean, obviously you retain ownership of the land, but you're usually entering into a lease that's so long that it's tantamount to a sale, and I think legally it's treated as if it is a sale. So I don't know. That's a discussion we could have because obviously the sale is not finalized, but I know that it is. For the proposers, it was represented to them that we were willing to do either option, and most, if not all of them, came back for the market rate components. They wanted to own the land.
Sure. And is there any way in the negotiations to sort of put a clawback? I mean, we keep hearing about the financial state of things. If there was any reason why the product is not produced, could we have that land back?
Yeah, for sure. I think, a couple options are, we can, if it turns out that components are not ready to go forward and the sale has not yet occurred, we could delay closing. So that's one option. Once the closing has occurred, of course, the land is now in private hands and we've lost that control over it. But as part of the development agreement, I believe that there's what we're contemplating as performance bonds to get at the issue that you're talking about of delivery of the thing that's promised as part of this.
Yeah, that had been discussed previously. Councilmember Jones and then Councilmember Melton.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the presentation and the ideas coming forward. I want to say, first and foremost, I love art. I love it. So I really appreciate that you're here. And I don't think that it's the discussion that we're saying is not that we don't like that. It's that we just had a big discussion about downtown safety, about more square and the lack of access to public bathrooms, so as we are creating that and what you guys are already doing with affordable housing and with Raleigh Rescue Mission is amazing, but these are separate. That is being done, and this is an additional, 3 parcels that we're trying to just make sure that we are uplifting that in conversation. Not to say that there's nothing wrong, and thank you so much for the email that further clarified. That was really helpful. I do appreciate it. But for me, I'm just kind of sitting back going, how do we already know what's going on, with Square Burger and all of that, and how do we make sure that as we're growing, we're answering different concerns. So it's really just to add to the table, making sure we're thinking of everyone in that area, not just the future residents, but also the residents that are still there currently, and really just make that part of the conversation. So I don't at all want anyone to think that any of us are like anti-art space, because that is not the thing. But we're just wanting to make sure that we're having that holistic conversation about what we're bringing to the area and not pushing more people out, specifically in this spot. So thank you so much for what you're attempting to do, what you're proposing to do, and being here to clarify all the questions. So thank you.
Councilmember Melton.
That was very well said, Councilmember Jones, and I agree with you. So I'm glad you raised that point. I'm at a place where I feel comfortable making a motion. I would like to add, I do think whatever we're going to call clawback or clause, that if for some reason this development is not feasible, that somewhere in the development agreement it gets reverted. I think that would be an important consideration in these contract negotiations. But at this point, I would move to.
That's standard.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Well, I would move to approve. I don't know if I'm supposed to say anything else. Move to approve.
Just say move to approve staff requests.
Second.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, could we redo that, please?
I authorize staff to include the additional parcels described in the agenda item to the negotiation package with Loden Hospitality and related affiliates for the direct sale of city properties already described in Moore Square South redevelopment request for proposals. So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think one of the key elements of this redevelopment opportunity is, for years we've talked about the ability to bring affordable housing downtown. This brings it absolutely at our city center and at our central business district core. So hats off for the team for working for months and months and months to be able to put together a solicitation that yielded such great support back. And we will not only be able to talk about it, we'll be able to be about it, because we will have housing right at Moore Square, and that's a big deal.
On formerly surface parking lots, which is a big improvement
Yes.
as well, I think.
Yeah, that's the icing on the cake. So the next item, we have Priscilla Williams from Engineering Services, which is going to give us another exciting update on another project that we've been working on for years and years and years and years and years. That is the Civic Campus, or East Civic Towers, and she's here today to kind of update us and give us some exciting news about next steps.
Thank you, Madam City Manager, and good afternoon to Mayor Baldwin and members of council. I am Priscilla Tyree Williams, City Construction Projects Administrator and Project Manager for the East Civic Tower. And this afternoon, I am here seeking your approval of the guaranteed maximum price, the GMP, for the East Civic Tower and the associated budget amendment that you approved in the spring. This journey began 7 years ago with the city initiating studies on means to improve the customer service experience through the consolidation of various locations in downtown Raleigh. The consolidation effort would be incorporated into the redevelopment of the Avery C. Upchurch Municipal Complex. Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, SOM, completed the master plan and identified the following goals and future building functions for what we now know as East Civic Tower: to create a consolidated public service area for an excellent customer service experience, to improve efficiencies and collaborative workspaces for employees, to provide civic meeting space, provide better access management for council, executive management, and staff, to offer staff conference and training rooms, and to focus on security, safety, and accessibility. Our path to construction has been challenging. We endured a global pandemic, and we had to revise the design. On March 7th, 2023, you unanimously approved the design contract amendment and directed staff to bid the project. You accepted the scope, reductions, and improved a new project amount of $206 million. The design modifications included a reduction in the total number of floors from 20 to 17, shelling 3 floors for growth, considering shelling an additional 4th floor, and maintaining the iconic architectural crown. As part of the scope modifications, the escalation was reduced and other interior and exterior reductions were made. Those changes increased the project budget from $190 million to $206 million. Here's a breakdown of the cost by project element. As shared with the city manager's office and city council throughout this project's development and each presentation before you, there are some non-construction related costs that are not included in the $206 million. These items include office furniture, workspaces, and some AV IT equipment and software. While part of today's recommendation includes a budget amendment, these excluded items are not part of that action. They're not required at the start of construction and will be incorporated in future annual budget processes. Staff estimates these costs at $21 million, and we will continue to fine-tune those estimates. The GMP is defined as the amount established in a construction contract between an owner and the CMAR as the maximum cost of performing work. CMAR, Construction Manager at Risk, is an alternate construction method that is available to state and local governmental agencies for project delivery. CMAR was utilized for this project because of the complexities, the site location, and the fact that it's a high-rise. Throughout this project team has aggressively managed costs, requiring scope and budget reconciliations at every design milestone. This project necessitated a phased approach to bidding to mitigate cost effects associated with delegated design features and/or fabrication and long lead times. The first bid packages were bid on September the 6th. 15 packages were bid, representing 67% of the construction costs, and the second bid event is scheduled to be held after building permit review. The GMP for the East Civic Tower is $181,500,000, and a budget transfer of $16 million is necessary to bring the approved budget to $206 million. We also wanted to address project financing. The project will be financed through bond anticipation notes, and 2 future council actions are required. 1, to schedule the public hearing, and 2, to hold the hearing, adopt the resolution authorizing the necessary bond documents, and authorize staff to proceed with the local government commission process. Fear not, I'm not here to speak on that, but Allison Bradshaw is here in case you have any questions. So in conclusion, staff recommends the approval of the GMP in the amount of $181,500,000 and the construction services amendment, and the budget transfer of $16 million. Madam City Manager, this concludes our presentation, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you so much.
Well, first, I want to just commend you, Priscilla, and the team for the work that's been put into this. It's been at least 8 years we've been working on this, and I know it's been challenging between COVID, the supply issues, the inflation, whatnot. You've done a great job finally getting this where it is now. So I just want to recognize that and say thank you. Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. I recognize that we have some great needs that will, really fit well into this project. I just want to ask a couple clarifying questions. I think issues that we probably discussed before, but I always just want to have that discussion before we approve such a large budget item. I'm just curious if you all could talk about any opportunities that we've looked into for purchasing or leasing, let's say, vacant office space, so existing office space in the area. Were there any opportunities for cost savings in that regard that were considered? And then I'm just also curious about some of the cost savings that we will anticipate from being able to vacate, our current offices.
So very good question, and we will have Michael Moore come to the podium to address it, but I will say this project has been in the making for a long time, and we did a lot of homework. We assessed the inventory downtown, and quite frankly, based upon what the current needs of this organization, the workforce of the future, conference space, community space, there was not another facility downtown that met our needs, to include the Citrix building. But with that said, Michael Moore will add additional, and you have in front of you a handout that kind of addresses the why, based on what we're paying currently in lease rates for the spaces that we currently lease. That will help to offset the expense of the operations and the construction of this new building.
Thank you, City Manager. Yes, excuse me. There are a number of savings that we will see, that we'll realize from not leasing space going forward. I think those, and again, we shared that. Sorry we could not get that into the agenda materials, but that totals about $750,000 in round numbers that we do on an annual basis. As the City Manager said, to serve the needs of our organization, to find buildings that have the kind of conference spaces that we need, to find the buildings that have, frankly, a chamber like this, where we have big, unobstructed, column-free spaces that has to be purpose-built. Those things are hard to find, and I can tell you from previous work that I've done in other places, It's just very difficult to find an existing building to come back and retrofit in ways that you can do that are also accessible to the public in an easy and meaningful way. The building, again, because it's purpose-built and purpose-designed, will be able to do things with security that we've not been able to do before, so we can create very public and open levels with a customer service center that we can't find in other buildings around town. We'll be able to do things like create conference spaces that are more publicly open, where they're not that interactions with other floors where we need to be concerned about the security of our employees. So to the point, this building is, it will be unique to what office environments typically look like, but it will be purposefully constructed to meet the needs of this organization going forward. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, thanks for including this here at the table for the members of the public who might be watching at home. So in addition to the $750,000 we're spending on leases, it looks here like there's about $20 million of investments we would need to make in the properties we currently own. This will enable us to not make those large maintenance investments.
Councilmember, that is correct. We'll be able to offset some of that in the new building, and we'll be able to address, this entire block will see sort of a revisioning and repurposing that was imagined in the master plan. So the kinds of investments that this building would need to have for the very long term, we'll be able to avoid those because we'll be able to put this to this site where we're sending today to a new use. I didn't mention, but there are other things that from consolidating our locations, it will help us create sort of a more modern building with more modern HVAC equipment, so we're not all wrapped up in blankets today. And it will also help us have, avoid some of those things like multiple security, multiple points of, cashiering, multiple points of customer service facilities and such. So that consolidation and that efficiency will be really one of the big drivers for this going forward.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you. And there are properties that we will sell and to receive funds to offset the cost of this project. Can you share a little bit about what those properties will be and maybe a loose ballpark on what the funds from those sales might be?
So not as being a real estate professional, I'd hate to proffer a guess on that, but we've looked and seen, I believe we had a number from 2016 that looked at OEP with a value of around 18 million. And again, those are going to be market-driven concerns, and to try to get the highest and best use to put those into the debt model that we have here will be important. We'll be able to, again, to avoid some leases that we've got. OEP is probably the biggest driver of what we can sell, but eventually we'll also be out of the we refer to it as the Dillon building, but the building over on Martin Street will be able to exit that building as well.
So we can share with you a copy of the downtown property disposition study that was done 6 or 7 years ago that sort of kind of at that moment gave an assessed value of what those properties are, which helped to build the funding model for the project total. Obviously, today's market looks differently, so we're hopeful that those numbers are low and it will be higher than that, but we can share that information with you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have a few items that we wanted to share with members of council. And this is so that you're prepared to go on site when construction starts. So you have your own PPE, and we'll be passing that out along with a brick.
Be careful with those bricks.
Now, are these one of the bricks that fell and almost dropped on somebody's head?
Be really careful with the bricks. From the building next door.
The bricks fall out. Seriously, and they gotta go.
So let's be mindful at the table, be really careful with those bricks because they can hurt. And they also are commemorative of one of the first things in visible activity, pieces of activity you will see. We try to be fancy and call the skywalk that connects the third floor next door. It's really not a skywalk, but we call it a skywalk. It will come down and then we will begin demo on 110. So this brick is from 110. So you all will have a piece of Raleigh history in your possession.
Thank you. Does everybody have a brick now?
And so with that concludes my report, other than I would like to say I have a new partner who mirrors me right now as the other bookend at the table. Welcome to Karen McDonald. Looking forward to working with you.
Well, you're full of surprises today.
I'm done now. I'm done.
Video to start. We get bricks. Oh, my goodness. What do we do for an encore?
I would find something for 7 o'clock.
All right, next we have the report and recommendation of the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come forth and present the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission Annual Report and Fiscal Year 24 Work Plan. I'm Wayne Miles, Stormwater Program Manager and Engineering Services, and my primary responsibility today is to introduce this gentleman, the Reverend Jamon Taylor, who is the chair of SMAC. And at this point, I will turn it over to Father Taylor.
Thank you so much, Wayne, and good afternoon to all. I want to begin with a word of gratitude to the mayor and city council for your continued support around SMAC, and I give that on behalf of the 10 volunteers that make up the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission. Our motto is to be storm water smart, and that is our mission. To recap a couple of things that we did last fiscal year, we were honored to host a number of city council members who came to the Field Transportation Operations Center to look at stormwater programs, maintenance, and repair technologies, also to review upcoming projects and as well as look at future initiatives. Some of the things that we did in fiscal year 23 under capital improvements, one of the large things was converting the Upper Durant Lake to a constructed wetland. For our drainage assistance programs, we were around $1.2 million in improving 9 projects. In stream stabilization, we're a little bit south of $500,000 related to 4 projects as we established a buffer builder bag program and stream bank repair workshops. One of our projects is R3, Rainwater Rewards. We approved 28 projects, right under $300,000, and 25 R3 projects installed, and we began maintenance on those projects. We also did projects as related to water quality, particularly repairing the Millbrook Exchange Stream Stabilization, or Millbrook Change at Park Stream. We also approved $3 million in ARPA funding, and you can see how that's delineated here. I want to talk a little bit about equity. One of my goals as being chair of SMAC is that we engineer equity into our process, particularly looking at historically underserved and under-resourced communities. And one way we've been able to do that is with our Rainwater Rewards Subsidy Program. Depending on your watershed, you are eligible for up to 75% or 90% reimbursement on rainwater rewards. That could be a rain garden or cisterns or rain barrels. That bar or burden is still too high for some residents. So by using ARPA funds, we're able to allocate 100% related to rainwater reward subsidy. This program will sunset in 2024, so we have to be creative about how to fund this moving forward, but we're very excited about that and the use of ARPA funds in that way. A Looking forward to this year, 2024 fiscal year, we'll continue to review our operational equity work and program policies. I briefly mentioned that specifically with the rainwater rewards. We'll review updated import DES, MS4 stormwater permit and programming, provide feedback to stormwater's operational, and then as relates to CIP budget, we'll review levels of service for our drainage assistance program as well as the stream stabilization programs, and provide feedback for stormwater design manual. We will also look at and review the city's floodplain management program, develop and enhance stormwater utility fee, crediting policy as perhaps a way of incentivizing the use of stormwater enhancement, GSI, and see how that can be applied to the stormwater utility fee credit. We'll review our drainage assistance, our stream sterilization, and rainwater rewards projects, and envision future stormwater management and commission priorities. I just want to say that it has been an honor to work with Raleigh stormwater staff. I believe we have one of the finest stormwater staffs in the United States, and as proof of that, many cities contact our stormwater staff because we're really innovative and forward-thinking, and they want to know how we do things here to help them implement it in their places. So again, thank you for your support, and I'm open for any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Definitely, thank you for being here, Father Taylor, and for your leadership on the committee. My one question is, in doing the reviews and looking at requirements and as far as development, can we also look at what impact that may come with housing costs? Making sure that we have that balance of making sure we have a community that's safe, that's vibrant from stormwater, but also we're making sure that no costs are passed along that may impact people being able to stay in their homes. So if we can have that lens, or have you all looked at things from that lens as well?
Are you speaking about the fee, the stormwater fee specifically?
Fees and just any like new requirements or things that may come about that the committee may suggest.
As it relates to fees, we do have equity as we review the fee that we suggest for each fiscal year. We don't think the fee is extraordinarily burdensome. We think it's reasonable. So that does go into our decision-making process and recommendation. As it relates to, I guess, single-family homes or even commercial or nonprofits, as we review any recommendations, we take a holistic approach. Obviously, there is care for the environment and control of what I call the 2 V's, the volume of water and the velocity of water.
Correct.
And so the more water we can keep on site, the better it is for the community. We also have to balance that to making sure that it's not overburdensome for private residents, nonprofits, or corporations. The good news is that technology is really pushing us forward in many ways, and things that were more expensive years ago are not as expensive now. And so as SMAC and working with the staff, it's always this conversation about how can we apply information or offer information so that developers and people can make the right decisions for their wallet as well as the environment. We don't see this as a zero sum. Right. That we can work together, we can be creative. So I hope that gets after your question.
It does, thank you.
I just want to follow up to that because we did have an instance with the Raleigh Area Land Trust on property. They were building affordable housing, and the stormwater fees would have added almost $1 million, which makes it not affordable. So I would just ask, too, that we really keep an eye on looking at things holistically. We also had an instance in our EDI committee where the state had certain rules that they were putting out that would have deeply impacted the cost of housing. So I think just the fact that you said you take that holistic approach, glad to hear that.
So in your comment, Mayor, are you talking about the stormwater fee that was $1 million for this project?
No, this was a different requirement, and so we don't need to go into the details. Okay. I'm just saying that that really helped raise our attention to that. So just so we're looking at things holistically, that's all.
Okay. Yes.
Councilmember Black had her hand up, and then Councilmember Patton.
Sorry. Hi, hello. Super excited to see you here. One of the things that I wanted to know more about was specifically the Rainwater Rewards Subsidies Program. You said it was going to be sunsetting in next year because of the ARPA funding not being there anymore. So can you speak to your thoughts or possible needs or possible interest about, does that program need to continue? Is that something that we should keep our minds around? Yes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
One of the challenges is, and we will talk to lawyers about this, when we think about programming, we have to be equal. And so if there's a 100% subsidy program, which this one is, then that would be open to everybody, no matter socioeconomic status, no matter neighborhoods. And this program specifically is targeting those historically underrepresented and underserved communities that make a particular amount of money. And so when we no longer have the ARPA funds, how can we offer this program? And so that's one of the things we'll spend the remainder of this year and next year working out. But absolutely, we need to move into this area because there's a historic component. And when you look at the number of projects that are done, maybe drainage assistance or rainwater rewards, and you map them, you see a space where you don't have as many projects. And there's a reason for that. Because just the burden is too high. So this program, I know it's one of the focus, maybe the top focus for the mayor and the city council is equity. This is a way of implementing equity, and I use this phrase, engineering equity into the system. It's very important, and I think this could be a model for other commissions, a way of thinking forward and looking at programs as a larger entree so that we can reach groups that historically have not been reached.
I think that's really great. I think you said equity at the beginning. I would consider that more like an equality sort of standpoint where everybody kind of just gets the same thing regardless of how history has impacted the way you may be affecting reality now. So I don't know if there's space for that in the conversation, maybe not this conversation, but going forward of considering that, because I was looking into it, I've talked to you about it, and it seems like a really great program that I would like to have continued, specifically targeting those areas that have been historically exposed to stormwater.
Councilmember Patton?
Hi, thanks for being here. I wanted to check in on the stormwater design manual. Have you all received it and given feedback already, or is that just getting like a process check on where the stormwater design manual stands?
I'll let Wayne give a more detailed update.
Yes, thank you. So the Stormwater Design Manual is in its third iteration of draft. It's been out for public comment. The Stormwater Management Advisory Commission has been briefed and provided some feedback and input. But the next step in that process we will plan by the end of this year, come back to City Council and request permission to initiate the official text change process, because the design manual is considered to be part of the Unified Development Ordinance and thus would follow the same text change process to adopt it as we would other UDO changes. So that will be the next step in the process. And then we will go through the normal UDO process, text change process, including public hearings and so forth.
Got it. So you expect that council will action that authorization by the end of this year?
Yes, that's what we expect. By the end of this calendar year, and then initiate the text change process probably early in 2024.
Got it. Understood. Cool. And then another question. I was curious what, if any, advice y'all sometimes offer related to rezoning cases. Do you ever take a look at those through a stormwater lens? A few cases we've faced and will face are really put up some important but challenging priorities between affordable housing and conservation management, and it would be great to have y'all's insight.
Absolutely. We've codified that even in our structure. So beginning of December 2020, we started a planning commission liaison. So that is now a member of SMAC who liaises or has conversation with the planning commission to bring stormwater concerns or stormwater thoughts to the commission, and then the planning commission, and have the planning commission also give feedback to stormwater. So that is a new channel of communication that is already a part of our framework that, as I said, started December of 2020, early 2021.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the stormwater water plan.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Reverend Taylor, for
Thank you.
being here. Appreciate your work. Okay, next we have report and recommendation from the Economic Development Innovation Committee.
The committee is reporting out text change TC 123, the stormwater management regulations, with no recommended action. We had a good discussion about it, though. And then we have 2 items pending, the HBCU Economic Development Roundtable and the Generator Music Initiative, and we will take those up at our meeting this month, Tuesday, October 24th at 1:30 p.m. in council chambers.
Okay. Growth and Natural Resources.
Yes, first, at our meeting, we did discuss the Omnibus Text Change Program for 2023. These are recommendations that resulted from a review of the UDO to refine language for easier interpretation and application of the code. We did consider 32 items, and 2 items, number 15 and 32, were pulled at the request of staff due to legal advice related to missing middle. The committee also asked that the crawl space definition be strengthened. Thank you, Councilmember Patton. And so at this point, what we're being asked to do, what council's being asked to do, is to authorize the text change process to begin, so that then we will have a further opportunity for review. So at this point, the GNR committee did make a recommendation that the council authorize staff to draft text changes as to the UDO for presentation to the Planning Commission. And just the changes that we did make, again, was to exclude proposed changes to the building type table, remove proposed district intent statements, and include proposed language defining crawl space accessibility.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then also, we did learn about the Green Growth Toolbox. We got a great presentation from the Wildlife Resources Commission. I want to thank them for coming out to see us. They provided some background on various tools to conserve natural resources and land use and transportation planning. I really appreciate City of Raleigh staff that then was able to highlight current work that we are doing in this regard, initiatives that are underway, as well as additional opportunities. So I expect that conversation to continue. At our next meeting, which is October 24th, we have several agenda items. We have the Mordecai Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District text change, continuing the conversation about the Green Growth Toolbox and the Greenway Master Plan, if we can get to all of that.
Okay, thank you. Right, next is Safe, Vibrant, Healthy Community Committee. Just that this item is still in committee. We had a very robust meeting last week on downtown public safety, getting an update. One thing I would like to ask, and this came up earlier, I was going to bring this up during our report, but I'll bring it up now. I would really like to see if the county could attend the next meeting and provide an update on where we are on the needs study that they were conducting, and also an update on mental health programs and how they're working with our unsheltered community, and any other pertinent information. I think especially for the new members, getting an update and being aware of what the county's role and responsibilities are would be helpful. Okay. Okay, next is transportation and transit.
So we had 2 items. The first one is Z5021 Fairview Road and Bickett Boulevard. We will actually hear that public hearing tonight. So in committee, we had a very robust conversation about the traffic, about parking, about the parking deck, about access to the park. Some of the things that came out of it was having the developer work with the community to look at ways of possibly changing one of their access points to the parking lot. Again, we we've voted this out with no recommendation because we have not had the public hearing. So that is the report on Fairview and Bickett. The other one is for Comp Plan Amendment CP 323, Column Watt Farm Park. This one was mainly around the questions I had around Rogers Lane and the widening of Rogers Lane and the possibly making a text change to reduce it on the development plan to a 2-lane divided. Staff was able to address the questions. I will state that I did receive an email from the community member resident who was not able to make the meeting. I have forwarded on to staff who will come back with recommendation. One of the things that we did not do when we referred this to committee was determine the next the day of the public hearing. So I have a motion here to refer this back to council with no changes for a public hearing on October the 17th.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous.
So that concludes my report, and we have no pending items. I'm double checking, making sure. Yeah, we have no pending items at this time.
Okay. We will now move to the report from Mayor and City Council. I'm going to start with Councilmember Harrison this week.
Yeah, just 2 items. These are just some exciting things going on around town. I just want to say happy North Carolina Oyster Month. This is our time in October to eat a lot of oysters. I just want to recognize that they are a keystone species in our coastal environment. And even if you don't get to the beach this month, you can definitely consume some of the sustainable seafood around Raleigh. I'd recommend checking out Mandolin, Earp Seafood Market, local seafood at the State Farmers Market, as well as St. Rocher Rock downtown. And then for anyone who made it to the Bluegrass Festival this weekend, it was awesome, had a good time. I did hear the train Saturday night, and I thought it went really well with the bluegrass music, but I know there are some concerns out there for neighbors who do hear the train at all hours of the night at times, and so I did want to put it out there, the opportunity to look at a railroad quiet study for downtown.
Quiet zone.
Quiet zone, thank you. So I think I need to put a motion forward to ask for options back from staff to go forward with such a study. Is that correct?
Why don't we do this, instead of making motion, have staff come back to us is either as a work item session or a
committee item?
An update, because I think that could be really helpful so we all understand what's involved. We've looked at this before, and but yes, it was funny because we were all in a meeting one day, a group of us, and the train came by and it was like, and everybody went, oh, we need a quiet zone. So if you live with that and experience it, and I heard about this the other day as well, it can be challenging. But could we have staff come back to us? I think that would be
fine with
productive.
me. Yeah. And again, I think it goes really well with bluegrass, but sometimes in the middle of the night, maybe not so much. I did want to also ask just, Marshall, we do have the noise ordinance out there right now for public review again, is that correct? So I just want to put that out there to the public that we are on our second community engagement review of the noise ordinance for downtown and the nightlife area. So if anyone is interested in that, please take a look at it. It's been updated, and we would love to get your feedback. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Fort.
Yes. I want to say I had an opportunity Saturday to attend the Rally for Recovery and bring greetings on behalf of the council. This is actually the 11th year that they've had this rally. It's a number of community organizers that work in the recovery space that do this rally every year. So I wanted to congratulate them on their 11th annual event.
Councilmember Jones.
Awesome. Thank you so much. A few things. So Fall for 5 Points is happening on October 14th. So if you want to join us right in that 5 Points area, we had a really great event last year, and we're looking to do it again. So please head on out there. It'll be all day. I have my next community conversation at Crafty, also in 5 Points, on October 11th from 7 to 9 p.m. I sent out a notification, but please email me if you have any questions. I have a few questions for staff. Can you, city manager, just help me understand where we stand with the city clerk position and when that's coming back? Because I think it was in limbo last time, and I didn't know if it was coming back this meeting or next meeting. When do we talk about that again?
So staff will bring it back as a special item. Tansy Hayward is not here today. She's attending the ICMA conference in Austin, Texas. So before I overcommit her, within the next little bit, we'll be bringing it back. She went back to do some further clarification around some of the questions that were asked, and we'll bring it back.
Awesome. Okay, I do want to send a big thank you to the Northwest District for RPD for my second ride-along last night. Officer Richardson showed me around the northwest area of the city and did an excellent job of explaining the job of RPD. There are ongoing issues with the ability to attract and retain officers, as well as firefighters, emergency dispatchers, and EMS personnel. We were actually on a call last night that requested an ambulance for a woman who was bleeding from her head, and there was no ambulances available. My goal is to continue to learn about the concerns of our first responders to ensure that they're able to love on our residents in their most vulnerable moments. So I really appreciate that opportunity and look forward to future opportunities. And then lastly, I was on a call with Jillian Johnson from Jones from Durham City Council, and we were discussing workers' rights, and they actually have a workers' rights commission in Durham that really sounded interesting, and I'd like to get just further clarification on what the possibilities, what that could look like, to make sure that workers' rights are amplified, and we are discussing their concerns as well. So that's really just food for thought. I will pick your brains at a different time to get the specifics, but I'm really interested in seeing what that would look like for Raleigh. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Just real quick, this past Saturday, I attended the Wake County Community Day by the Cosby Economic Development Group. This is a group that the city and the county has partnered with in supporting, basically bringing resources to individuals in the community. It was their rain date, so I think that impacted turnout, but I think it was still a very impactful event, and people did come out. So that was today. That was this past Saturday. On September 21st, I will have my Nets District C meeting, our monthly meeting. It will be back at the Nets' building off Lenore Street from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. And also, unfortunately, I cannot eat oysters. I have food allergies. So for all those out there that have allergies that cannot enjoy the oysters, let's find another way to celebrate North Carolina seafood.
And you mean October 21st, right?
Yes, October 21st. Thank you.
Councilmember Black?
So first, I want to talk about something I did over the weekend, and it was actually not in the Triangle area, but it was with the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. I was able to attend a toxic tours that were in the West Baden community, which is about 30 minutes outside of Charlotte. So not in the area, but it was really great to be able to go support, learn more about the industry, environmental racism, and environmental justice issue that has been facing this community for about 100 years here in North Carolina. And I just wanted to spotlight and uplift the work that NCEJN is doing. If you're a person that's interested in learning more about how you can connect with environmental work, specifically around environmental justice in North Carolina, I think the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network is a really great place to start. To the same tune as what Councilor Jones just mentioned about Workers Commission, I like that idea. I would be supportive of it. I hope we can come to some sort of regard. Durham always seems to be leading in the area around really progressive things like that, and I want us to see if we can also be leaders. But also, something that I have been fleshing around with, and I think I've mentioned it to several people, is a youth commission, specifically 18 to 26. Being barely in my 20s now, that's something that I am always thinking about. Like, how can we have specifically that age range, that college age range of students here who are coming in and activating our communities in different ways, have a better connection to the city. And I would love to see if a youth commission could be something that we could look into, and I asked the manager to look into that for me. And then other than that, no other updates, but like, if you're watching this, be tuned on my social media. I'll have an update on there pretty soon. That is all.
Awesome. Hello. Hi, everyone. I wanted to uplift some of the things. So for viewers at home and any members of the public, you see us ask the manager for updates on things, and depending on how detailed you comb over the city website, you may never hear what those updates are. So I had a few to kind of return to you all. One is that we have asked our budget staff to start the budget commentary process earlier so that y'all's commentary can be factored into the application of the budget. And we are beginning to see the implementation of that. And so on October 11th at 6 p.m. at Abbott's Creek Elementary, there's a budget listening session for District B. So that serves my constituents, but there's the district meetings across all of the districts. So I encourage residents across the whole city to find out when their listening session is. It'll be great to participate at this time so that your feedback can be folded into the next budget. So thanks, Sadia, for your work there. Also, I had asked previously for transportation staff to bring back information on how we can improve Capitol Boulevard and at the intersection of Calvary, which is, and I wrote some sobering facts that in 2022, Capitol Boulevard accounted for 25% of pedestrian fatalities in the city, and so far in 2023 has accounted for 50% of the pedestrian fatalities. So that's a really troubling and sobering statistic. But at the intersection, we just got the flexi posts put up to change the way that the turn traffic pattern, the turning radii as it's described here, to slow the way people can turn through that intersection. I drove that traffic pattern this weekend. I really do think it'll have some really positive impacts. So I want to thank you all for your speedy work there. And then there's future pedestrian improvements planned, like shortening the crosswalks, upgrading the signal design, and relocating the transit stops. So just want to really thank you all for your work there, and I'm really looking forward to the improvements that it'll make. If I could ask for maybe that quarterly briefing, maybe if quarterly is too frequently, then semi-annually, but some briefing on the impacts of those changes, I'd appreciate it. Folded into that brief that you all sent, there were some other pedestrian improvements. I wanted to highlight some that are coming to District B, which are identification for full signalization at Wakefield Pines and Mabry Mills, Wakefield Pines Drive and Schoolhouse Drive, where there's two school campuses, Perry Creek and Midtown Market Avenue, where there's another school campus. So there's just a lot of good work and hopefully funding coming along for improvements across our city, and specifically to the children and students of District B. So thank you all for your work on that. Also wanted to shout out our urban forestry department. Do we have any of the park staff here today? Oh, hello. I just wanted to shout out our urban forestry department again. They received a grant for $1 million of Inflation Reduction Act money to plant and maintain trees, and particularly in areas where equity and historic disinvestment has occurred. So I'm just super glad that they went after that funding, that they've achieved it, and we can continue to further climate goals and equity goals that are so important. So celebration there. I could keep going on and on, but my last one is I did want to ask Raleigh Water and planning staff to bring us some policy analysis and options for how we manage public utilities in our urban service areas. In the past two consent agendas, we've had deferrals of annexations wherein the resident has received one, but not all public utilities, and are not fully annexing into the city. And I would be interested in how we can manage our growth in that area. All done.
Councilmember Melton?
No report today. Just thank you for my brick and hard hat.
Thank you. I have a few things. First off, I did want to say thank you again to Special Olympics and to Highwoods for including us. I think I'm thanking them for including us in the rappelling, but it really was an incredible experience. And for a great cause. So I think you started off the meeting today, city manager really recognizing those with special needs, but we also call them special powers. So great event. Second, I wanted to mention, and thank you for joining me, Councilmember Patton, at the skate park grand opening at Smoky Hollow on Sunday afternoon. It was incredible artwork that's been done there, incredible diversity and sheer fun. The kids were having a great time. The adults were having a great time. So it was just really fun to watch. And one of the things that was announced was that the Conlon family has issued a $100,000 matching grant. So they are continuing to make improvements there. That was really exciting. I just wanted to mention, too, that yesterday I got to welcome the Austin Chamber here. They are having their intercity visit here. So I think that they will learn a lot. We had some really good discussion about everything from ADUs to policing. And then after that, went and welcomed the Software of Business here. There were about 200 people from around the world. In our city, really great comments, and I just want to thank them for bringing their conference here. And finally, you're all going to get something from your policy analyst. This Thursday, we'll be honoring the North Carolina Courage with a proclamation congratulating them on their championship, and I hope you can make it. Thank you. Right, next we have appointments.
Good afternoon. Jumping right in, Historic Cemeteries Advisory Board, 1 regular vacancy, no nomination, so that will be carried over to your next ballot. Human Relations Commission, 2 regular vacancies, Jakari Clayton and Jamie Lynn Robinson each received 5 votes. However, Mayor Baldwin nominated Dr. Jignasa Sucher, so it's up to the council how they'd like to proceed with that. What we had discussed last time is any individual that did not receive 5 votes would be shifted over to the alternate vacancy slot. So it's up to you all how you'd like to proceed.
Well, I just want to say the last time I had mentioned that I was going to reach out to our Jewish community and our Indian community to see if we could find some candidates who might be interested to replace people who were serving. Rabbi Solomon has announced that he's resigning. Member of our Asian community has as well. When I reached out to our Jewish community, Shannon Gessner had expressed interest, and she came highly recommended from several rabbis. And then the Indian community had recommended Dr. Sashner. So, I'm really concerned that we're not representing the full community, and I want to make sure that members of our Jewish, Asian, and Indian communities are represented on Human Relations Commission.
So what are you asking? Are you asking that we put those peoples into motion for the alternate vacancies?
What I'm asking is, could we consider this again, bigger picture?
I want to be equitable to the people who got the 5 votes and put them on the board, but I would love to have the other people considered for the alternate vacancies as well. If you wanted to nominate them, I would be supportive of that, absolutely.
Again, I'm going to express my concern at members of our community being excluded. I told you last time that I was doing this.
Yeah.
And obviously, there was no consideration.
Well,
So-
if you wanted to nominate them last time, I would have loved that. I think my concern that I also mentioned last time is that HRC was not able to meet quorum because of the vacancies that are happening. And so I wanted to make sure, I rolled it through. I gave everybody the opportunity, the time to make nominations. And the votes happened, so I'm just hoping that we can get to a place of getting HRC back to quorum before they have their next meeting, I think next week. So.
Like
I
I
would-
said, I'm disappointed that we are not being as inclusive as
There's
I feel
still
we
an
should be.
opportunity, I think, to get more diverse voices on the board. There's some more vacancies that are going to be rolling out pretty soon, and we also still have an alternate vacancy.
And I've nominated a member of our community for that vacancy.
Awesome. Well, that's great. I look forward to seeing that name and seeing that application the next time around, but I would want to move forward with the 2 people that we voted for this time around.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So I hear the concerns, and out of me just being fair and consistently, we have said if they got 5, then they would move forward. I know what is being missed on the Human Relations Commission based upon those who are not represented there currently, with those that have stepped down. But I would say just out of being consistent with what we've done here at the table. I mean, sometimes there's some things I may like or may not like, but I want to make sure that we're consistent and fair about it. So if they receive 5 votes, I think that's probably the right thing to do, but also keep in mind going forward the need that we have on the Human Relations Commission so that we can make sure that we are having that true cross-section and going forward.
Well, I probably wouldn't be as concerned, but I did bring this up last time and express these concerns and said I was going back to the community to ask for their recommendations. So obviously that was, fell on deaf ears. So that's unfortunate.
Well, they got 5.
I don't
five
think we
votes.
have to vote on it.
Yeah.
But so where we're at is there's still 1 alternate vacancy.
Yep.
So we'll have 2 nominees for that, and then perhaps if there is another vacancy that comes up soon, we could prioritize some of these names that we have now. So let's just try to all keep that in mind, I guess.
So that's correct. Based off conversation, Jakari Clayton and Jamie Lynn Robinson would be appointed to fill those regular vacancies. Dr. Sucher and Mayor Bonneman's nomination for the alternate vacancy, which is Shannon Gessner, would appear on the ballot next time for the alternate slot. Moving on to Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board, 1 regular vacancy. Ian Burnett received 5 votes, Mr. Fletcher 3, so Mr. Burnett would be appointed. Raleigh Sister Cities, 1 regular vacancy. Mr. Kilbride received 1 vote, and Ms. Renaga Perez 7, so she would be appointed. Substance Use Advisory Commission, 2 regular vacancies. Both Ms. Conyers and Mr. Parada received 6 votes, so would be appointed. Moving on to nominations. Board of Adjustment, your reminder to submit suggestions for county consideration. I have reached out to the county just to kind of feel out where they are with that. Hope to get an update soon. Appearance Commission, 1 alternate vacancy. The term of alternate member Bernard Thaxton is expiring. He's not eligible for reappointment due to length of service. He will continue to serve until replaced, and the item will appear on your next ballot for consideration. As a reminder, at this point, when I do announce vacancies, you can also make nominations at that point. Environmental Advisory Board, 1 regular vacancy. The term of Scott Greenman is expiring, and he would like to be considered for reappointment.
Move to reappoint.
Is there a second? It's been moved and properly second for reappointment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed are the same right. Passage unanimously.
All right, Fair Housing Hearing Board, a resignation has been received from Eric Colburn, so that vacancy will be appearing on your next ballot for nominations. All right. Councilmember Fort nominated Octavia Rainey, so that will show up on your next ballot as well. Historic Cemeteries Advisory Board, 1 regular vacancy. The term of James Denby is expiring. However, he does not wish to be reappointed. He would continue to serve until replaced, so that will appear on your next ballot for consideration. Stormwater, sorry.
How many members are in the historic cemeteries? Active members?
Let me pull up the roster here.
Because we,
Seven.
Seven. So, because that last one, that's the one that we've been having trouble filling. It's the one we're constantly reminded that we need to find someone, and now we're going to have a second one, so we'll need two vacant, we have two vacancies as of next meeting.
Yes, there'll be
With 5
two.
people.
Yeah, so 5 out of 7. However, as far as quorum and all of that, the members that continue to serve until replaced, they'll still help that. So, and count towards that quorum. So both of the individuals, Drew McGill and James Denby that I just announced, those are both in the situation where it's not a true vacancy yet because they're still sitting there till they're replaced. So they're not going to have necessarily those issues.
And I just want to flag, we have no one from District B currently on that board, so we may want to.
District B residents, get your applications in, please. I would love to nominate you.
Thank you.
Next, Stormwater Management and Advisory Commission, 1 regular vacancy. The term of Ann Spafford is expiring, and she would like to be considered for reappointment.
Move to reappoint.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was unanimous. Thank you.
Lastly, Substance Use Advisory Commission, 2 regular vacancies. The terms of Kemi Amola and Christopher Gibson are expiring, and both would like to be considered for reappointment.
Move to reappoint.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous.
Thank you, that's all.
Right, next we have the report and recommendation of the city attorney.
I don't have any.
Okay, now we have the report and recommendation of the city clerk.
I was gonna let you, we have some
Move
minutes.
for approval.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. We have closed session today. I'm going to read a motion in order to enter closed session pursuant to GS 143-318-11A4 to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses within the city, including consideration of economic development incentives that may be offered by the city in negotiations. And GS 143-318-11A3 to consult with the city attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege and to consider and give instructions regarding the handling and or settlement of a potential claim in the following matters: George Venters versus City of Raleigh and Marvin Butler Bennett versus City of Raleigh. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. session where we provided direction to staff on items discussed. Thank you. We are back at 7 o'clock. Adjourned.
So you.